Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Afterlife podcast. This is your host, Pooja Chilukuri. Today, I am honored to be in conversation with Lynne Anne McGrail. Lynne Anne McGrail is an end of life doula and a grief support specialist. She has an MA in spiritual psychology and is also an ASL interpreter since 1991. And she is joining us today to share her expertise and her wisdom on a very difficult topics of death and grief and end of life. Welcome to the show, Lynne Anne.
Oh, Pooja, it's so wonderful to be here with you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. I think that this is, very synchronicity is all around us, right? And this moment right here happened very organically, for which I'm very grateful. We were introduced to each other through a common friend. And when she told me about what Lynne Anne does, which is helping people prepare for end of life, I was very intrigued. So, Lynne Anne, my first question to you is going to be that can you please help us to understand what that is? What do we mean by end of life and what is that process?
Exactly. Well, people often ask, what is the doula part of it, an end of life doula? And I always compare it with, we've heard of the birthing doula, correct? So that person is a non-medical assistant that will guide someone through the birthing of a baby, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I do the same thing only at the other end of life. So as the person is getting ready to transition, they're starting to release their body. I am their bedside with them to guide them, to be there to express any fears that they might have, to answer any questions, and really importantly, to support the family in supporting their loved one as they're getting ready to transition. Um, as a as an end of life doula, it's not about going in and fixing it and making it better and having everyone feel good about the situation because death is really hard. I mean,
Mhm.
as a society, we don't talk about death. It's unfortunate, but it's one of those things that it's going to happen to all of us, right? There's not anyone is going to be getting away with this, right? So part of what I do is really just help support and educate the people in the process of transitioning and their families that it's okay, that it's okay. It is hard, it is sad, but to understand that it is a part of life.
Mhm.
And so oftentimes I can see the difference in a family when they have had the conversation. Like, okay, I know that my friend has a wish of things that she would like to have happen at her end of life. She knows what people she wants there. She knows what music she wants playing. She knows what she wants to wear. She doesn't want to be on a machine. She wants quality of life. And then I have other people that I go into their families, to their homes, and it's like, you don't talk about it. And then what happens is you have to make these decisions at the 11th hour in crisis mode. And
Mhm.
that's the part that's really hard for me to witness and for me to guide them to a place of coming to peace of mind, because that's ultimately what we want is peace of mind at end of life. And the thing that can be frustrating as an end of life doula witnessing these things is that those crises are preventable. They really
Mhm.
are. And they all start off with a conversation. Come
Mhm.
and talk about it. You know, we all truly want end of life to be peace of mind. Most people will say, well, I just want to die in my sleep.
Yeah,
Me
that's
too.
yeah, me too.
Yes. I mean, who doesn't, right? Who doesn't want to just go to sleep and then not wake up and that would be ideal. And sometimes people don't go that way. And how can we support those that don't go that way? How can we be supportive in their journey? And really, it's all about just being with that person, no matter where they're at in their journey. If they're showing frustrations, just validating their frustration,
Mhm.
responding to their fears, and really getting the skeletons out of the closet so there can be a peace of mind at end of life. And what
Mhm.
I mean by that is I was talking with this one woman, she was 91 years old, so sweet, and she had colon cancer. And we were having a long conversation. We did a legacy project together. And it came time to talk about her family, and she had a son who she was estranged from. They hadn't spoken in 2 years. And I said, I'm happy to try to reach out to him and say, hey, mom's getting ready to pass. This is a great opportunity for you to come together and, have a conversation about it. I didn't want to use the words make amends or make it better. It's just more about, can he become curious enough to have a conversation with his mom? So I called him, and he said to me, you have no idea what it was like growing up with my mother. She was very hard. She was harsh and mean. And no, I have no interest in talking with her. And of course, my heart was like, I got really sad for that. And I said, okay, because I don't know what it was like with
Yeah.
her. She's at end of life. People at end of life are different than who they were growing,
Mhm.
living. They they see things differently. They feel things differently. There's an awareness that this is really it. Like, this is really it. So I went back and shared with her the conversation that I had with her son, and she was okay with it. She was okay. And she was grateful for my trying to reach out. And she said that she was just going to bless him. And I thought,
Mm.
that's just so beautiful that she was taking that approach as opposed to carrying the anger with her.
Mm.
Then, ironically enough, she passed about 2 weeks later, and I get a call a few days after she passed from the son, and he had changed his mind. He wanted to talk to his mom. And I was like, oh my God, sweetie, you're too late. You're too
Mhm.
late. And I share that story on purpose to let people know that we have today. We
Mhm.
don't have yesterday. We don't have tomorrow. We
Mhm.
literally have right here, right now.
Mhm.
And if there's something that you're holding back from someone that you love, or if you're having animosity or holding grudges, please do your best to just have a conversation with that person. Get curious with that person. How can we resolve, unresolved issues, so that we can have peace of mind, not just at the end of life, but while we're living. It's always good to get those skeletons out of the closet while you can.
Yes, those are a very heavy burden to carry. Very,
Mm,
very heavy.
mhm,
That is such a beautiful work that you're doing, Lynn. And,
yeah,
I am one of those people where talking about death was a very uncomfortable topic for me for years.
mhm,
Um, I had some events that happened, and, I just was like terrified, just the thought of it. And I
sure.
cannot imagine, being at that point where you're at the end of life, things are spinning out of control. We have no control, in a sense, over that process, right? And to have somebody there to just witness, to be a witness, to not judge you, to care for you, to listen to your feelings, to help you, I think that's just beautiful and incredible and helps you to have a sense. I think that would give me a sense of some sense of control over an otherwise situation that I have no control over. So thank you for the work you're doing. And I'm curious now, talking about curiosity, what led you to this work?
Well, that's a great question. People often ask me, like, why would you choose to work in such a quote unquote depressing field? And I really think I've been training for this my whole life. I lost my brother when he was 13. We had a house fire, and I was 18, and he passed away from the smoke inhalation. And he was a go-getter in life. He was passionate about living. He loved basketball. He just went all out, even at 13. He was like an older soul, if you will. And while that was completely devastating and turned my whole world upside down, several years later, it came to me, the purpose of his life was to help show me the purpose of mine, which was to really live each moment to the fullest. And then just throughout my life, my best friend who had lung cancer for years passed, and was able to be with her and see her transition, and my dad, and just a lot of personal experience that just has come to bring me to this place where I am right now. And the most recent one was a few years back that really, really touched me, which really brought me to this career. And that was my niece. She was 32 years old and she was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And she had her colon just burst and her whole body went sepsis. And so it was just a matter of moments that she was going to pass. So she was in New Hampshire. I was living in California. I took the red eye out, flew in, and was with her bedside as she passed. And this really interesting, odd, weird, I don't know what to call it, feeling came over to me as she was like releasing her physical body and spirit is moving up. I got this huge knowing that she's not really dying. She's releasing the physical body, but
Mhm.
the spiritual part of her is still very present to us. And even witnessing what I felt looked like visually seeing some like a wisp of smoke or something from her face coming up like it was her spirit. And this whole feeling came over me of pure, unconditional, deep, deep love. And it was this sense that I need to do this. I need to be with people when they're transitioning to know that they're not really dying, that they're just going back to being 100% version of love. That's who they are. And so I was sharing this story with a group of women a few weeks later because I was profoundly touched by it. And they said, "Oh, that sounds like an end of life doula." And I was like, "A what?" I hadn't heard of it. And I said, "Really?" So, of course, you go on Google and you find all sorts of schools, and there's plenty
Mhm.
of places to go and get educated and certified as an end of life doula. And I went to one in New York. And the reason I chose the one I picked was you had to have some hands-on volunteer experiences with hospice in order to graduate.
Mm.
And for me, that was the icing on the cake for me to say, yes, yes, I will definitely join this program because it was actually on my bucket list to volunteer at a hospice when I retired. So why not do it now? So it worked out very serendipitously. I mean, it was just an interesting calling. It's not the kind of thing that when you're growing up that you say, "Oh, I'm going to be an end of life doula." I mean, I wanted to be a ballerina,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So here I am. But I feel so blessed to have been chosen by the universe, God, Lord, all whomever, the higher part of us, to do this work, to serve in this way.
Mhm.
And it's extremely rewarding. It's extremely rewarding. And people will say, "How do you do that day in and day out?" I don't do it day in and day out. I stick with one or two families at a time. And
Mhm.
then I also do things that I love on the side. So there's a nice balance. So I do love doing this as well, but there's just always a balance in life. But and there's a couple of things that when people are working, or even a person that is with their loved one and they're passing, and it's really heavy and it's hard.
Mhm.
There's some things that I show and teach that I do for myself that I can show them. And one of them is really visualizing or imagining this white light around me to help protect me so I don't get too caught up in the emotion. And that way it allows me to be present to them, to be
Mhm.
fully grounded with them.
Mhm.
And then when I leave the situation, I take that shroud of white light, like a cocoon, and I give it to them because it's their experience, it's their journey. You
Mhm.
know, I'm just privileged to be part of their journey for a short time, but
Mhm.
I don't need to bring their journey into my journey and pass it on to somebody else's journey because it's theirs. So I take off that white light, surround it with them, and people will hear that and think, "Oh, I have hard times in my life. I might just do that just to protect myself from that boss who's really hard to work with, or from a sibling who's really challenging to be with, because that
Mhm.
will help protect us, the me
Mhm.
inside who I am."
Wow, that's powerful. That is
Mm,
powerful, Lynn Anne. And you already answered one of my questions because I was curious how you are able to do this work without, getting overwhelmed. And you just answered it. And when I'm listening to you, the word that kept popping in my head a million times was the word sacred. I
mm,
just feel like that is sacred, that kind of gift of your presence
mm.
to people that really are going through what I consider the toughest trial in life is to lose your loved one. To me, that, anyways, humans are very resilient. We can go through so much and,
Mhm.
and come out of it. But I always feel like that would be the hardest journey to make. And,
Yeah,
talking about that, I know you are also a grief support specialist. So
correct.
I would
Right.
love to hear what you have to say about that. And if you have any tools you want to share with us, go for it.
Sure, sure. But I just wanted to backtrack a little bit to talking about having that conversation
Mm,
with the loved one,
mhm,
to get it out on the table, to
mhm,
talk about what it is that you would like to have at end of life, because ultimately peace of mind is what we look for.
mhm,
And I just want to share some resources, and one of them is called Your Conversation Starter Kit. And it's put on by the Conversation Project. It's a nonprofit organization called the Conversation Project. You go to conversationproject.com and they have all this information. They actually give you a script on how to sit down with your loved one and start the conversation. I mean, obviously don't do it in a heated moment. It's a
mhm,
quiet time, but it's just a beautiful way to start to have the conversation.
mhm,
And then the other resource too is once we started having the conversation and we're going to talk about what it is we would like to have at
mhm.
end of life, there's this document called the Five Wishes, and it's like an advanced care directive, if you will, and it just offers up the five things that you would like to have happen at the end of life. How comfortable you want to be, how I want people to treat me, what I want my loved ones to know. So it's just a beautiful way to give that gift
Yeah,
back to the family. And
that's,
so I
and
just
is
wanted to
that,
share that first.
yes, absolutely. Is the Five Wishes also a part of that conversation project? Or
No,
it,
it's not. It's a separate, it's fivewishes.com, also a nonprofit organization. It's
okay.
through an agency called Aging with Dignity.
Yep.
Okay.
And because I'm asking, because what I'll do is I'll put the links in the show notes so people can have,
Sure.
yeah. So I will do that. Absolutely. And so, having conversations is hard, Lynn. My husband has had significant health challenges since he was 30 years old. And after we had our second kid, he would start talking about it. Like, if something happens to me, this is what I want. And I would not listen. I would be like, don't go there. I don't want to hear it. Because I had this fear that talking about it would call it in somehow.
Right. Oh, that's so
And
common.
is it? Well, good, I'm not alone. And
So
I'm so happy to say that he is doing better.
that's
But
great.
it's not something I ever wanted to talk about. And now,
Yeah.
ironically, that now that he's actually feeling better, I'm just like, yeah, I want to think about this. I actually told him, I said, I want to give me everything like a document because
Mm.
my mind is not going to be working if I'm going to be losing you. So I need everything spelled out, written out, bullet points. Tell me what you.
It's absolutely a way that we can give that gift to our families is
Yeah.
by letting them know what you want. And it is a hard conversation. I just want people to know that it is. It's really
Mhm,
hard. And
mhm.
it's okay. It's
Yeah,
okay that it's hard. And
yeah,
it's, making it an okay thing
yeah,
gives it a better chance of maybe it happening. Maybe it will happen or not.
yeah, yeah. Because you're right. Just thinking about it can bring so much grief. So, back to that,
All
you're a
right.
grief support specialist, right? So
Yes, yes.
how are you, what are you, tools or how do you help people with that? I would love to hear it all.
Well, the idea of becoming a grief support specialist was born when the pandemic happened and I couldn't be in people's homes anymore. So I shifted to working with the families after the person had passed. And of course, during COVID, that was a really challenging time for all of us. And there was so much grief and loss. And part of my service back to them was to let them know that they're not alone during that time.
Mhm,
And what a person, like from my own grief, when I've experienced a loved one that's passed, the important thing is to be able to understand that wherever I was in my grief, that it's okay. Like
Mm.
that's exactly where I'm supposed to be. Society has this idea that you should be having grief look like this. It should be okay. You've got a loss, you've got some shock, you've got fear, you've got guilt, you've got depression. Then there's some new strength coming in, there's some hope, and then you've adjusted just like that in a linear fashion without any hiccups whatsoever, and you'll do it in 3 to 5 weeks. No, that's not reality. This is reality. This is what grief looks like. This is all over the place. And what happens is people will grieve this way, but they think they should be grieving this way.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of self-judgment about
Mhm.
how we grieve.
Mhm.
And part of being a grief support specialist is really just witnessing their grief, letting their grief be seen, let it be heard, let it be just
Mhm.
vent it out and
Mhm.
let them know that no matter where you are in the stage of grief is exactly where you're supposed to be. No two people grieve the same way.
Mhm.
One person may, have had to be with their loved one who had dementia. My dad, 7 years, had dementia. And there was a time when it was like, oh my goodness, it's getting worse and worse. I wish that he would just go already. And that's what we call like a compassion fatigue, where you're caring and caring, and finally you're just like, oh my God, I can't do anymore. And then the guilt comes in because now you've wished them to be gone,
Mhm.
and it's like a double whammy. So, as a grief support specialist and as a doula, going in and just letting them know that that's okay that you feel this way and you need a break when you're
Mhm.
taking care of a loved one that's
Mhm.
passed. But when my dad passed, there was a sense of relief, if
Mhm.
you will,
Mhm.
that he has released his body and his
Mhm.
mind and now is up in the space where he needs to be 100% love. And that to me was like just it's beautiful. Of course, I still miss my dad. And in fact, talking about having it be messy, I was shopping at Costco's. This is about several months ago. And I'm just shopping, and my dad's favorite song came on the intercom.
Oh.
Damn, I said, with, from Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And I'm shopping, not even thinking of my dad. And it hit me like this huge wave out of nowhere. I was instantly sobbing. I could not stop the emotion that came.
Mhm.
I left my cart with the groceries. I ran out to my car and I just sat in the car and just sobbed and allowed it to come out, like just to release it. Because grief is a heavy energy. If we don't release it, it will show up in other parts of our body, gray hair, heart attacks. Like it just
Mhm.
it needs to be released. And
Mhm.
so releasing that feeling of sadness about my dad, then going into gratitude that I had my life with him, that he got to be my dad, and then going back in and wearing my sunglasses and finishing my shopping.
Mhm.
But it's like that. Grief is like it comes and it goes and it ebbs and it flows. And there's never going to be a time when you stop loving your loved one. It doesn't
Mhm.
ever end. But how you are in your life, creating that new norm for you
Mhm.
is what can be challenging. And so there's another diagram I want to share with you where people think that grief gets smaller with time, right? It doesn't, it stays the same. What changes is that we slowly shift around our grief. We become a different version of ourselves, but
Mhm.
without our loved one. And
Mhm.
that is hard. And it's okay, again, that it's hard. And that's part of what we do as grief support specialists is just let them know, letting myself know, like, okay, I had a moment. I felt better. I felt so much better after I released it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lynn. And I was smiling at one point when you were mentioning about the heaviness and how we need
Mm,
to release that. When I was growing up and I grew up in India, like a lot of the movies that we watch, they would show like, the protagonist dies or somebody dies and the doctor comes home because back then the doctors would make house calls and they were like, you've got to get this person to cry because if they don't cry, they could get a heart attack or something could happen to them. So it's really funny. I grew up watching that in movies. Like that was part of the
Yeah.
culture, to get people to cry. And I
Interesting.
think we've also, as a culture, sort of started shunning that, like tears are sign of weakness, or we
Mm.
sometimes will hold things in because we want to be strong or whatever that is. But it's very important. So thank you for reminding. Yeah, very important to release that.
It is
Yeah.
very, very important to release. And sometimes the release doesn't have to necessarily be talking with somebody. Lots of people will work out, like they'll
Uh-huh.
get release from working out, like physical work,
Hmm.
journaling, writing it down.
Hmm.
There's other ways to express that grief
Yeah.
if someone's not comfortable talking to somebody, but
Yeah.
it's just important to release it no matter what.
No, no, no matter how, right? Whatever
Right.
way we choose, we're all different. I absolutely, absolutely second that. And then another thought I had when I was reading about your work, and by the way, I love your Facebook page. I really do.
Oh,
So thank you. Very, very, encouraging posts. Um, and one of the questions I have is, how can we live or what can we be doing while we're still, full of life and not anticipating that next step, to practice or to prepare so that it is peaceful and not that we're not doing everything at the end, right? Like, are there things we could be doing now,
yeah.
emotionally, mentally, and anything?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, first, the what comes forward first for me is to get prepared for end of life while we're healthy. Okay.
Mhm.
But even more importantly is to truly understand that we don't know when we're going to go. That life really, really, truly is short. That is one thing that I'm learning over and over again with myself and with my patients that I'm with, that it's truly short. And so if there's something that you're holding back on keeping you a little bit happier in your life now,
Mm,
if you're unhappy with your work or you're in a relationship that's not serving you, or
mhm,
you have a bucket list that you're going to wait till later to do,
mhm,
nah, you know, do
mhm,
these changes now because this moment is the only one that we have,
mhm,
right? This is the only moment. The past is gone, the future's not here. So when we're stressed out about the past, it just holds us in the past. When we're anxious about the future, we're anxious about something that hasn't happened yet.
mhm,
So if we're in the moment, this moment right here, in this red hot moment, I like to say,
mhm.
is the perfect spot, the perfect space to be in. But how do we stay in this moment? Because life happens. You've got to have a schedule. You've got to, okay, it's 9 o'clock. I have to go to work now. It's to be present with everything that we do. Almost like the Buddha says, as you wash your dishes, don't just wash the dish and think about what's going to happen tomorrow. See and feel the water, smell the soap, feel the texture of the moistness on your hands, being fully present with whatever it is you're doing. Having a conversation with Pooja, enjoying every moment of this conversation is being fully present. And so it's not an easy thing to do. It's a conscious thing that we have to put our minds to. I mean, I have a meditation practice that helps me stay focused and grounded. I always invite people to do that, have a little me time, at least 5 minutes a day to say, I just need a break. And in that break, I'm just giving myself a moment to be at peace, to be present to myself,
Mhm.
to my environment, and to truly know that, life is a gift.
Yeah,
It's a gift.
it truly is.
That's why they call today the present. Ah, ha,
Yeah.
ha. Bad joke, sorry.
No, thank you so much for sharing that, Lynn. And I think what I'm taking away from this is practicing presence in
Mhm.
slow measures, right? So that's a muscle we can build. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. And the thing, and talked about your Facebook page earlier. I do want the work that you're doing, I do want people to be able to find you. So is that the best place for us to reach you?
Absolutely. Facebook is, I do a lot of postings about what it means to understand living and understand death. And so, yeah, my Facebook page is Lynne Anne McGrail. It's just simple Lynne Anne McGrail, McGrail. And I do have two. I have a life coaching Facebook page, which I don't really touch anymore. I have everything just on my main page because it's all about wholesomeness, connectedness, and not separating my personal life from this life. I just have it all one page, so it's easier. So
That,
yeah.
that is
Oh.
great. That is really great. And Lynn, before we wrap up, is there anything that was on your heart that you wanted to share and I didn't ask the question? Just anything at all?
There's just one thing I really would like to share, and I went back and looked at a little bit of your other podcasts about near-death experiences, and I just want to share that when a person is at end of life and they're in the process of letting go of the physical, becoming more spirit as they release, their loved ones do show up. They often will talk about, grandpa's in the room, or Joey's in the room, or Inky, the cat, is here with me. Do you see it? Do you see him? And I always share, I don't, but I know that they're there. I believe you, so that understanding at end of life is you're not alone. Like
Us.
you get people that will guide you. And I know that sounds cray cray. Like
Well,
some people, yeah, some people are like, what? But there's some beautiful books by Raymond Mooney who talks about life after life, that talks
mm,
about the glimpses of eternity, of two of the names of his books, where people who have past witness something amazing and then come back to share about it. And that happens at end of life too, when they can see their loved ones right there. And oh my goodness, it's so beautiful to witness that. So I just wanted to share that with you and with your people who are listening.
that's the most hopeful, inspiring, and very, very beautiful thing. Thank you so much, Linan, because the people that I interviewed, yes, they absolutely validate that. And one quick thing I will say, what it reminds me of is, so I've lived in the US for over 30 years, but India is still home, where I grew up. That's my soil, my people, all my family's there, right? Whenever I'm making this trip, whenever I have to go visit family, I have a lot of anxiety about leaving my kids or my husband here, because there's family here. But the minute I'm there and I see their faces, it's
Mm.
like, boom, transition done. So,
Yeah.
to me, it's something like that. And the universe, God, source, however we think about this this being is or being itself, not just a person, I guess, but very benevolent to
Mhm.
provide that. I have a dear friend that says that loving hands hopefully are receiving us when we come into this world, and it's no different when we're leaving. So the
Yes.
word doula makes sense again. It's again like, the delivery and the birthing. So
That
thank you
that
for sharing that. Very powerful. And
that
thank
was
you
a
for being on
beautiful
this
wrap
show.
up. Full circle. I
Oh,
love
full
it.
circle, yes. Thank you
Oh,
so much for being on this show, Linan. To those who are watching and listening, the reason I do these podcasts is because I want people that are working so hard to make other people's lives just a little bit better in whatever way they can. Sometimes these people are very shy and they don't want to talk about themselves, but I really want to bring their work to light. And Linan, you are one of those people. So I really hope that people find you, because I know this is a need that's not going to go away.
mhm.
So I hope many people find you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me so much. I appreciate it. And
Uh,
forward to the next one.
yeah.